You're good.
Hello and welcome again to Functional Friday. I am Becky Schoenig, one of the co-owners of SymBowl here in Kirkwood and in Chesterfield, Missouri. We are a healthy lifestyle restaurant, but we don't want that to scare you off a whole lot because healthy is defined by whatever it is that you choose healthy to be for yourself. We also want you to know that if you think you are healthy, but your husband, boyfriend, or kids are picky and they're just those meat and potatoes kind of guys or girls, I can guarantee you they can come in here and they can find something that they love just as well as you can. So we are a place where friends and family can eat together regardless of their dietary needs. Welcome today, my guest, Kimberly Lebbing. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So this is one of those interesting interviews where you're actually getting to know each other for the very first time in this interview, which doesn't happen very often. However, what I love is I have a team of people and myself, and we're constantly out there seeking some of who we feel are some of the experts in topics that we're wanting to pull in and discuss. And today we're all about gut health and fermentation. So Kimberly, can you tell us a little bit more about you and what you do exactly?
Okay. Well, I am a certified health coach, and I teach people how to, in some cases, how to make fermented foods, gut-friendly foods, how to implement it into their lifestyle, and how to improve their digestion, because we know that all diseases begin in the gut, and it's absolutely linked to everything. Your mindset, your body functions, if you're suffering with diseases or autoimmune disorders, it's all connected.
Okay, so what's your story? How did you even get started in this?
Okay, so this is a little bit interesting. I did it and a lot of people, I think, start because of their own stories. But I was a frustrated, worn out mom. That's how I started. I had my own autoimmune issues. I had seizures ever since I was a child. I had psoriatic arthritis. I had all kinds of depression and anxiety, sick all the time. My kids, one of them was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. Another one had ADHD and dyslexia. My youngest was not diagnosed, but acted bipolar and just constant temper tantrums. And because of that, we started on a journey, health journey, and we tried eliminating foods, which was a little bit successful. And I say that because I didn't know what I didn't know, because I just took foods out, but didn't put the right foods back in. And
okay, so can you explain that a little bit? What were some of the foods that you were taking out?
So we started because I had read about gluten-free and dairy-free diets for kids on the autism spectrum. So that's where we started. And it really was amazing taking dairy out. My daughter started having real conversations with us. Up before that, before we took it out, she was very encyclopedia-like in her conversations. And 2 days into dairy-free, and we noticed that she was, really starting to engage in conversation with me. Inspired to keep going. So we took gluten out. We had great results. My seizures stopped, but there's so much gluten-free junk. So this is the part I didn't know. There was a lot of sugar-laid pieces out that are gluten-free things out there, not real food. And we were just replacing our bad diet with a different bad diet, so to speak. And we became more sensitive. So I started reacting to gluten cross-contamination and even having seizures from that. So it was really not a good place to be.
So you started on your own journey off of like reading books, self-discovery, education. And then what happened?
Then we took a trip to our doctor because my son Max was just having so many temper tantrums that it was hard to get through the day. And I really feel for moms that go through this. But I remember going into Trader Joe's and he would scream the entire time we were in there. And then just the looks that you get. And I knew it was food because of what we had already done, but I didn't know where to start because we were already gluten and dairy free. So went to the doctor, got some tests done, found out that he was sensitive to things. He was sensitive to the gluten-free flours. He was sensitive to cantaloupe and green beans and garlic. I mean, it was crazy. And you should be able to eat those things. So that was when everything turned and we decided to do a gut healing diet instead.
Okay. So it's a 7-day challenge. Am I correct? And I've seen a lot of your posts that it's a 7-day gut challenge that you do.
That's to get you started. You're not going to heal.
I was going to say, yeah, we all know that it takes a lot longer. But you do this challenge. But I will say, I think the reason that I love the way that you're saying it's the 7-day gut challenge to get started is because if you tell somebody they need to do something for 30, 60, 90 days or longer, they're looking at that going, are you kidding me? Almost anybody can be successful in a 1-week period of time.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the nice thing is once you see some good results, it inspires you to keep going. And thinking back, we were the same way when we cut out dairy. I had the attitude of just 4 days because I knew that's how long it took to get out of your system. And in 2 days, we saw some positive results. So,
yeah, I'm an advocate of telling several people, I do it all the time, to eliminate gluten and sugar completely out of your diet for 7 days. And if that doesn't give you some stepping stones as to how your life can be different, then I don't know what is. And the more often you do it, I find, the more frequently you're going, okay, I can do this longer the next time. I can do this longer. And before you know it, it just becomes a lifestyle and a shift and a change for yourself.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about some of these foods, because you said that you were eliminating certain foods, but you weren't putting other foods into your diet. Let's talk about what those foods are.
Okay, you're going to love this because you guys serve a lot of them. So that's why I love you guys. It gives you like an option that's not.
Why do you think I do these videos? Do you think it's for you guys or for me?
Right. Right. So we did, the gut healing foods, and it's really interesting how I came about doing this. And this is kind of a real moment, but I knew we needed probiotics, and the amount that we needed for all of us to get healed on the protocol that we were following, it was a ridiculous amount monetarily wise. Like it was almost a car payment. And at the time, financially, we just couldn't do it.
Right.
So I started looking at probiotic food instead. And when I read that a spoonful of sauerkraut has more probiotics than an entire bottle of probiotics, therapeutic strength, that had me sold. I'm like, okay, I have to figure out how to do this. So that kind of started the journey. And so we started implementing things like sauerkraut, goat's milk kefir. We still stayed away from cow's milk at that time. Kombucha. I fermented everything. I fermented ketchup. Anything you can ferment any food. So we did it all, and we just started putting that into our daily routine, along with bone broth. And I know a lot of your dishes have bone broth in them as well. And that was really a turning point. It was amazing how many great results we had by just implementing those foods.
So I love just that one takeaway. If anybody's watching this, I love just that one takeaway is that yes, your healing journey can be expensive. And especially if it's not just you or one person in your family and you're taking your entire family on this journey, there are ways of making it more affordable for you by doing your own fermentation. Can you explain just real briefly how you go about doing fermentation at your home?
Okay, it's actually so easy.
I know.
It's like people, because I do videos. I used to teach this at Whole Foods whenever it wasn't cool then. Like now you can readily find it at a lot of different stores and buy it. But back then it just wasn't. This was back in 2012, not that long ago, but it's really relatively easy. You can use a salt brine. I have one particular thing that I show to people. I should have brought like an example, but cut up carrots. We call them dilly sticks. So, and I have a story about that too. But if you take carrot sticks and put them in a mason jar, a wide mouth jar, with a little bit of dill and about a tablespoon of sea salt, fill it up with water, make sure the salt and everything is dissolved, put the lid on it and let it sit out for 2 to 4 days, depends on the temperature of your home and the time of year. In the summertime, maybe 2 days. In the wintertime, 4 days, possibly 5, depending on how cold your house is. And then you open it up and you have it almost tastes like a pickle. We call them dilly sticks at our house. And the funny story, do I have time to tell you a funny story about that?
Of course you do. I mean, who doesn't ever have time for something that'll make you laugh? I see Chris Collins listening, and so I'm sure she gets good giggles out of whatever it is.
My son was outside playing when we were in the middle of all this, and he was telling a little neighbor girl about dilly sticks and how much he liked them because kids really seem to like them. And she said, "Oh, I like those too." And he got so excited that she knew what dilly sticks were. He went in the house and she pulled out a Dairy Queen dilly bar. You know the bar? Not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no, it's so can I ask how old your kids were when you started on this journey?
Max was 3, Charlotte was 6, and Gabrielle was 8.
And how long has this been now the lifestyle in your home?
Now they are 18, 15, and 11.
Oh my gosh. So this has been a while.
Yes, it has been a while. And the end result of all this, my daughter, the oldest, had dyslexia and ADHD. She was in honors English in high school this past year. I mean, the teachers don't even believe that she used to read everything backwards. She used to flip everything. She was 3 years behind. So it's really incredible. All of them are really thriving. My son that used to have temper tantrums, he's like the calmest kid. People comment about how calm and that his whole demeanor is.
So you had one that was 3, and am I correct? You said you had one that was 9 when you started it. Was that the oldest one, 3 and 9? Yeah. Was it more challenging changing the eating habits of that 9-year-old?
A little bit, yes, because I definitely had to educate them on what was going on. So, which I use a lot now, the same education I did with my kids, I use a lot now with my clients and showing them what was going on with their gut. They were really sick. They were underweight. They weren't gaining weight. That 9-year-old was in the same size for 3 years. So she was not growing. And so they didn't feel good. So they knew too that we needed to do something. So I just explained how the gut worked and what we needed to do to fix it. And they were okay.
That's fascinating. I think that's probably one of the most commonly asked questions that come up is how do I change my kids' eating? And yeah, it's one thing if you have an entire household that's starting to change and shift, but all of a sudden, if your kids are used to certain foods being in the house and you're eliminating it, like how long does that struggle last?
So what we did, I don't even recommend, because we were like, I just threw everybody into the coals, like hot fire. Here we are, we're doing it. But what I find that most people are more successful with is switching things out, just wanted at substitutions that work. I work with a lot of families that have autism kids that need to make those changes just a little bit at a time. And so that's a little bit trickier, but I think that it's more sustainable. Most people aren't ready to just throw everything in, but I was desperate.
Yeah. Well, I think I think that's probably one of the leading things, is that when you're desperate, when you're diagnosed with something that's chronic, when you see your children,
yes,
when it becomes your child, you're going to probably wind up doing whatever you need to do. Or you've hit that rock bottom. That's when you start making changes. So let's have a conversation with those people that are not hitting rock bottom right now, that it's not about their kids. It's just about them and their everyday health and functionality for longevity. How do you start making some of those changes? And let's have that conversation with those people for a minute.
Okay. So for those people, and I'm assuming like some of these people are probably maybe having issues with weight. Maybe they're having some issues with stress and anxiety. Maybe some things that they're not. So it was obvious what our problems were, but some things are not as obvious that are still related to the gut. And not making any changes and keeping going with whatever you have going on, even if it starts with just a little bit of allergies, or one day you wake up and you have a rash and you don't know where it's come from. That's related to the gut. That's an autoimmune response that, your body's out of balance and we need to get it back in balance. So for those people, I would encourage them to still make some changes, but it doesn't have to be a complete overhaul. It can be a little bit at a time. So what would you say would be the first 2 or 3 like stepping stones? First 2 or 3 stepping stones. I almost always, dairy, especially if I hear somebody's got allergies or skin issues, dairy is like the first thing to go. And I find that, or if they're bloated or constipation is going on, that's like the first thing, because I think it's the easiest to get out. So that's like a easy thing. And next I would go to cleaning up, just cleaning up what you're already eating, making sure you're getting whole food versions of whatever that is.
Yeah, when we talk about whole food, I think that marketing in the grocery stores can be very confusing for people, especially when they're going to what they think is the healthiest grocery store out there, going to a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods or anything like that. It's really still continuing to walk the perimeter of the grocery store. That is where you're going to find the whole foods. Sometimes in the freezer section, you're going to find the next courses or next phases for you. But anything that's coming boxed and prepackaged, even if it says kale chips, carrot chips, or anything with a vegetable word on it,
right.
If it doesn't look like its natural form, it means it's not its natural form.
Right. If it doesn't look like a carrot, it's not a carrot.
Right, exactly. You shared one of your funny stories. Mine's not necessarily that funny. However, I've been on my own health journey. It's interesting how you start doing something, you go, oh, I have no health issues. I don't have anything going on. But the more I started doing this workout, the more I started recognizing my own personal, low energy. Then I started having major stomach issues, mental fog, all of these things that I had not had in a really, really long time. I had a lot of that in my 20s. And then all of a sudden it started triggering back up here in my 40s. So I've had my tests. I've been working with my doctor, and I have my autoimmune, and I was told when I was leaving, you need to eliminate all these things. I have a bacterial infection going on. And I had to, so for me mentally, and I'm talking now to that, the person who's going, how do I do this when I feel so limited if this is what I have to do to clean it up? So for me, I have to look at it that I'm not eliminating anything and I'm not saying no to anything, that it is 100% my choice, that nobody is saying I can't eat these things, only I can choose to not eat those things. And when you start becoming more conscious and aware of the choices that you are making and how those foods make you feel, then you start understanding why you're making the choices that you're making. I think food journeys are not much different than somebody who's an alcoholic or a drug addict. Step one is being conscious and aware of how it is reacting and responding to you. So my little boof is that I've been now pretty much sugar-free, haven't been having any sugars, gluten. Now I have not eliminated dairy. I'm a Wisconsin girl, and that's been my but I feel like I'm being successful right now, eliminating those two things. However, I went to a Halloween party on Saturday and chocolate chip cookies showed up. And I ate 4 of them. And I would have probably ate more of them if they weren't gone by the end of the day. However, because I had gone so long, that next day, my stomach, I was in pain. And the trigger for me is mental with gluten more often than stomach, depression, bipolar, all of those things that you kind of had mentioned before. And 2 days later, I recognized for the very first time how that gluten affected my mental side. I was so negative. I was having all of these negative conversations with myself. I mean, it was just like I was being abused by my own mind. And I think the more we go through this journey of just cleaning ourselves up and becoming more conscious, the shifts start becoming easier. Have you found that to be the same thing with many of the patients that you work with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's a mind shift for sure. And exactly what you're talking about. In the beginning, you're more sensitive to the foods that you're taking out. But an interesting thing is, and this was part of my own journey, is I began to fear my food.
Yeah.
And that's not a good place to be either. And so I do, when I talk to people about eliminating food, I talk to them also about not being in fear of it. We're above the food. But so I think that's really important, because mindset's huge in health. It really is. And if I was expecting that I was going to, I don't know, like how crazy this sounds, but if I was expecting to react to something, then I would, even more so. And maybe I would anyway, but not to the degree of if I was expecting that, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I think that if you have consequences, and that's the thing, if you have a consequence that is an obvious consequence, like you're on the toilet constantly, or you're throwing up, or you have a migraine, that's a major consequence that you have. It's much easier in many ways to just say, I am eliminating this completely. On the other hand, if your consequence is mental fog, depression, anxiety, stress, we think we're walking around in this world thinking that's just normal. Everybody feels like that.
No, that is not normal. It is not normal. It was normal. So it may be normal for you. That was my normal.
Right.
Being constipated and having the other extreme too. I was all over the place with that, but it was all normal. Anxiety was normal. Depression was normal for me. And I think a lot of people get in that mode that it's normal, and you don't know how good you feel until you feel better. I mean, that's just I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I felt like the cool thing is, as we were healing the gut, there was such a relationship between what was going on down here and then what was going on. I mean, it was directly related. I saw it. And I can't remember exactly what month we were in, but I felt like cobwebs had been taken off my brain. I all of a sudden wanted to be social, and I was never a social person. I would have anxiety about a group of maybe 6 people. And, now I've gotten in front of 500 people and given presentations. So, it's really incredible what can happen when you work on healing the gut.
Kimberly, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope we can meet in person here someday.
Yes.
Soon. I want people to also understand and know that these health coaches are out there as a resource that becomes much more affordable for you to get to your end goals than it is always. Not everybody has to go directly to a functional medicine or integrative doctor to get to the root causes. You simply starting to make healthier choices and decisions, and a coach helping guide you through that can be just as resourceful, if not better, for many of you. So I'm an advocate for those health coaches like yourself, Kimberly, that are out there educating and making everybody's lives a little bit easier. If you are looking to connect with Kimberly, she will post her information in the comments. Kimberly, can you tell people really quickly where they can find you if they're listening, what your website is?
Oh, absolutely. MyGutHealthCoach.com.
And do you have anything coming up? Are you doing any education right now or any workshops?
Oh gosh, I have a lot of things going up. If you go to my page, there's events, but I'm doing an event with kids out in St. Charles with moms and kids. Going to teach some sneaky mom tricks.
Awesome.
That's next week, next Thursday, out at Keogh Chiropractic.
Okay.
I have other events coming up too. November's a busy month for me.
No, I bet leading into the holidays, it really is busy.
It is.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So Kimberly will post her website in the comments so you guys can go there, check that out. I want to thank all of you guys for not only supporting the Functional Friday interviews, because we do these as a resource. All of our videos are archived on our website, www.mySymBowl.com. If you go to Find Your Inner Flavor and then go to the podcast component, you will see all of the videos that we've done with experts throughout St. Louis and outside of St. Louis to bring you what I hope is resources that help educate you and guide you to better health for yourself and for your family. Again, I'm Becky Schoenig, one of the co-owners of SymBowl here in Kirkwood and in Chesterfield. Make sure you're telling your friends about this. Share and make comments just like this if you are watching it after the live video. Thank you again, Kimberly. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.